am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Enrico Palmerino, a serial entrepreneur and founder and CEO of BotKeeper. His leadership and focus on execution, vision, values, and culture have attracted the top talent necessary to transform industries. BotKeeper has raised over $50 million from marquee investors and serves thousands of companies and accounting firms. Enrico is on the board of Fidelity Bank and has been recognized as one of the top 100 most influential people in accounting and top 30 most inspiring business leaders. During my interview with Enrico, he shares his entrepreneurial journey that began with his grandparents that instilled in him the hard work and perseverance to create a successful business, as well as his insight along the way of not letting his aspirations take time away from what is most important in life. And remember, if you like this podcast, make sure to subscribe and share this interview and story with leaders and other coworkers, friends, or family that you think this would be helpful for. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I am here with Enrico Palmerino. And Enrico, you want to start off and just give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. I'm the CEO of BotKeeper. And before BotKeeper, I was a math major or a quant major from Babson College. I started a company while I was there that automated how you do lighting analysis, design, and manufacturing. It grew very quickly during my college stay or in my dorm room. And I think we got to about 8.5 million in revenue by the time I was graduating. So
wow.
A whirlwind. And that honestly is what set me on my journey in the bookkeeping and accounting sector. So we had a nice exit with that business, but accounting was like a thorn in my side through the whole process. And, decided I was going to try to tackle that and went into, cloud accounting, and then realized all the headaches and challenges that come with running and scaling a cloud accounting firm. And ultimately, that's what led me to founding BotKeeper.
It's so interesting how many non-accountants start accounting businesses because they're frustrated with accounting.
Yeah. I joke. I'm not a CPA. I just play one on TV.
Exactly. So let's start from the beginning because that's definitely a big shift in your life. But maybe you can start off just giving us your story. So where were you born? What was your family life like as you grew up?
Sure. I was born out in a tiny little town called West Brookfield. It's in western Massachusetts. And, we out where there's farmland and everyone has multi-acre kind of plots. So you don't really, you have neighbors, but you can't see them through the trees. I think from a family perspective, my family was always very close and big. I come to find that I'm not as Italian as my name might lead you to believe.
Okay.
16%, but we act like an Italian family. So lots of big get-togethers and stuff
Palmerino.
Like that. Yeah, Enrico and my sisters, Angelina, my brother's Vincenzo. So we just went with it.
Look at that. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think my grandfathers on both sides of the family were entrepreneurial, starting their own businesses, and I think I loved the impact that they had on the local community. It was like they were like celebrities within like a town kind of thing.
Yeah. What kind of businesses did they have?
My grandfather, my mom's side, had a farm agriculture. I'd say like products distribution business. So like fertilizers and different like feeds and stuff like that. And my grandfather on my dad's side started a supermarket and like plaza and kind of gas station. I mean, not a gas station, a car wash and some other I'd say like shops and stuff like that. And so Yeah, it's funny. We used to, joke that you couldn't go. I still can't. I can't drive through the town without someone recognizing the name and being like, "Oh, Mark's son," or related to Big Bunny, which was the supermarket. So it was fun.
Big what? What was it called?
The supermarket was called Big Bunny Market.
Big Bunny?
Yeah.
Was
Had
there
this
a
like
story
giant.
behind the bunny?
No, it's just like a giant rabbit on top of it. And we used to have like fists up and stuff, like fighting prices or something like that. And now that's just kind of like that's been the name.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been fun, and it's been I think definitely inspiration for my career path.
So did you work in their businesses at all? Or were you a part of
So
it?
I was like a little stubborn, like I never wanted a job. And so I worked, I'd say tangential to the businesses,
Okay.
rather than, bagging groceries at the supermarket. I had a hot dog stand that I was able to like have outside or inside the supermarket, or I bought vending machines and like gumball machines and stuff and put that in the market, and then a bunch of other businesses. So related to it, but I always just kind of like, I wanted to do my own thing, beat to my own drum.
So why do you think that is?
I think I'm probably just not good at taking orders. We're
Just
pretty
from a young age,
stubborn.
you just weren't good
Yeah.
at taking
Yeah.
someone being your boss.
Don't tell me what to do. You're
Yeah.
better off like influencing me to do the thing you want by like having me think I came up with the idea. But
Right.
that was just always, I think my style is like I liked going down, if we like were going for a walk in the woods, I would always want to like blaze the new trail versus follow the one that was already there. And that got us lost sometimes, and poison ivy and stuff. But, yeah, I think I always like, I wanted to like explore and do new things, and love the responsibility of it and the ability to kind of control. Like I was like, I think a control freak more than I am these days at an early age.
That's interesting. So what did your parents do? Were they part of those businesses or?
So my dad went into hotels, hotel management originally, and then came back to run the supermarket when my grandfather had gotten sick. And so he went into it, was like bagging groceries. He like did every one of the roles in the market before he eventually took over the
Did he
management of
enjoy
it.
it?
He not really. He was like, I think it was more of a job for him, or more
Yeah.
work. And but he felt like he had to do it.
Yeah.
So, and he's like I am, like, anything we're going to do, we're going to do it to the best that we can. So even if
Right.
he didn't like it, but eventually he loved like Wall Street and like stocks and trading and wealth management. So eventually decided to leave, get into that, and then start his own wealth management firm,
Oh, wow.
which has been fun because like I've seen his firm has grown, and like he's been like ranked, top 10 or something like that in Massachusetts, and then BotKeeper has been ranked. And so he kind of, it's been fun to kind of see
Yeah.
and experience it in different walks. And
So
my
do you
mom,
think watching your dad not want to do that job kind of put you more into that path of like, I want to do my own thing?
yeah, I think maybe, I mean, I saw like my dad also, it was tough. Like he was working like, running a supermarket's a lot of hours,
Yeah.
and you're up early to go
7
get
days a
like
week.
produce. Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
he was home as much as he could. But it was like, he's kind of like a slave to the business.
Right.
And then I saw my grandfather on my mom's side. He structured his business like totally differently, where he was able to like have super flexibility in terms of his schedule and time, and retire like early, and kind of like sell off the business to one of his partners. And then my mom was, I'd say like entrepreneurial in the sense that, she'd gotten into like starting like day spas, and, was doing like consulting and stuff like that. And so I kind of got to see like, the benefits of all walks of life, and
Right.
stability to control over your time, which was
Yeah.
cool. So
And I would also say probably like people getting into businesses that they didn't have expertise in necessarily, that they just had an interest.
yeah, and I think like honestly, I had originally gotten into lighting, and I didn't have a background in lighting. That was like the first startup I did in college. that had
Why
done.
did you choose that?
I saw a problem, and it started as like a class project. It was like, go find something that you can build like an access, based solution around to like automate a process or a task. And I saw these people like doing a lighting assessment on campus, and they were flipping through pads of paper and taking notes and looking at catalogs and documenting it. And I was like, well, the catalog could be database, and whatever calculations they're doing on the graphing paper, I bet could be like pre-programmed, and you could take all that in, and instead of having to do a whole bunch of calculations and manual work, you could, likely automate it with some software. So that's what led me down that path. And being naive to something, I think it's a really great value. So, my dad, I'm sure, innovated, a lot of aspects of the supermarket because he came into it, not being, call it like the passion, and not having like any preconceived notions as to what was possible.
Right.
And I
No
did the
one's saying
same.
that won't work. Yeah.
Yeah, or like
Yeah.
being told like how things should work. So you kind of, instead you come in and you start to ask like, well, why couldn't we do it this way? Or um, and that's worked well with both, BotKeeper and in that lighting company I had too.
Yeah. So, so when you were a kid, was there any dream you had of what you wanted to be?
Yep. So it's funny because my mom, I think, still has this picture I drew. Like, I think you were in like third or fourth grade when they're like, draw a picture of what you want to be when you're older. I literally drew like a guy with a briefcase and put CEO up top.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
uh, yeah, I'd say like, I'm definitely living my dream. And in high school, I remember talking to like, I just love math because I love the problem solving side of it. But didn't know if like, I didn't want to be a math professor. And I
Right.
remember just talking to my professor and being like, what's it like? I just want to solve problems all day. Like that's what I want to do. Like, what job is that? And inevitably, I'd say like that's honestly being a CEO. You're just constantly faced with headaches and problems, and you got to figure it out.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Some days you're like, can I take a break from solving problems today? Someone else solve them.
Oh, that's me on like the family side. I'm like, oh, when it comes to like planning where we're going, it's like, no,
No,
babe,
I'm out.
you got this one. This is your game plan. I'm here to like be the passenger and ride along. Yeah.
My brain is tapped. Yeah.
Totally.
Exactly. So okay, so you started this lighting business. What did you learn? Because you were pretty young and
Yeah.
not even finished with college.
Yep.
So from knowing what you watched with your grandfathers and your father and your mom, what did you take in? What do you think you took into that business that maybe you didn't fully understand until you were running a business?
I think, it's I think you go into it and you think that it's going to be like a little bit easier. You're like, oh, I got this idea and I'm just going to like start it, and clients and customers will come, or
Right.
like you build it and they will come, sort of thing. And you realize like there's a lot more work there to get something off the ground. Like, buying the vending machines does not mean that they're going to be placed in a location and then even if you get them placed on a location, didn't mean that they were actually going to be like profitable or get enough foot traffic. So it's like research and analysis and a lot of like, cold calling of store owners and stuff to get that there. But I think the
And
thing
it's
that like,
that sweat equity that people don't understand, I think, right? Like getting your hands dirty.
yeah, and I'd say that, but that's what I had. Like the thing I really learned from my family and parents was that, like, that was there was no shortage of seeing at the home, or across my grandparents and stuff. Like their biggest skill set, they tell you like they're not the smartest person in the room, but they'll outwork anyone. And I think I was like instilled with that drive and desire that, even though I think I went into it a little naive, thinking it'd be easier, like I was gonna will it to be, no matter what. So yeah.
Yeah. And so where did the business, like, what was the lowest point and then where did it turn around?
Yeah, so as far as the lowest point, not really like a low and then everything high. It's like a roller coaster, of lows and highs. And I think there was a point where I learned to not make assumptions, and we were making a new product that we were patenting, and we were doing some contract manufacturing. They told us like, all right, if we produce this as fast as you want it, like you need this out next week. Like it's not going to last as long as it would if you let the molds, like we had to build this mold that was stamping these products out. The mold's not going to last as long if we kind of accelerate the production like this. And I assume that like, if this is like a 10-year mold, that like not as long as like 5 years, 8 years, and like, who cares? It didn't last the production run. So
Oh no.
kind of I should have asked more questions. And between that and like, some accounting, honestly, it was like an accounting mistake from our books were behind, and like some cash flow hadn't been like caught up or reconciled. And we found ourselves like in a point where it was like, all right, like we've already got a bunch of debt personally on this. I think at that point we might have had, $1 million in debt each, like that we were personally liable for, because like our business couldn't hold debt. So we had to like personally sign off on it. And I remember just thinking like, well, my life's screwed. $1 million in debt that's not collateralized. That's going to be hard to pay off on top of student loans.
Right.
And so my partner and I just looked at each other like, well, if we're screwed for the next 40 years, what's the difference between that and the next 60 years? So we took on another $2 million in debt, so another million each, and we got ourselves out of it. Like, we corrected the ship. That was what we needed to like get cash flows back to like the right point. We some of our clients, we had, we always put the client first. So, it was really great that like when the business needed them to like be flexible with us, like on delivery of product or on payment terms, some of them were willing to like help out and do what they could. And then because we were vulnerable and letting them know, like I'm the first time, this is like my first real venture. Like we made a couple mistakes. We're going to get through it. There's a few people and a few clients of ours and mentors and advisors that just like grabbed the torch and helped run with it. And so having people around you and doing good by others, like they pay it forward. Like, karma always comes back. And so like, being able to like, pull from that bank a little bit when we needed it most was awesome. And
yeah,
it led to a big success, which was great.
So how did you go and sell it? Were you approached or?
Yeah, we were approached. So we were, when we were growing that fast, I think we were like 46 on Inc.'s 500 list for a few years running. And that put us at like, we were one of the fastest growing in Massachusetts. And we were, I was flying like around the globe, and so was my partner. And so imagine like these, two young kids in China too, where like we tower over most people. And we're like standing like, at the docks and like loading up crates of lights, and like on like we've got boats,
yeah.
you draw attention, and people are like, what's going on? Who are these kids and what's this business? And so, yeah, we ended up going international, and that drew attention, and then ultimately got approached by a manufacturer that wanted to incorporate us into their business. So, and then that didn't exactly go as planned. So the outcome was great, but I'd say the post outcome, I left the business, my partner stayed. And, I think there were some hasty ideas around how that integration was going to work. And so ultimately my partner and his brother bought back the company themselves, and they raised some capital, repurchased it for, pennies on the dollar. And now it's like, it's a big business again in Massachusetts and doing really well. So, if you got the right people who are determined to see something succeed, they'll make it succeed.
Right. And have the passion for it.
Yeah.
Right.
And they do. And I did, but like I got, international business sounds glorious. But when you run it in all the time zones, and I was never sleeping, I was getting calls at like 3 a.m. in the morning. Like there's always fire drills.
Right.
I was ready to be out. So
yeah. And so did you finish college during this, or you went and did this?
I did. I finished somehow. Despite trying to like take a leave of absence numerous times, my counselor kept being like, look, let me like work with your professors. And I got to, it's like, it's one of those things where you realize that you're like a piece of, a greater organism. So my business succeeding also brought attention to Babson, right? From an entrepreneurial perspective. So, there was I'd say like an invested interest in, making sure that we could succeed while being students. And that meant that like some of our class projects were projects for the business. Like he was like, you're opening an office in Turkey. Like the success of that's going to drive the success of your grade. And here's some students to help you. Or my legal professor helped us with contracts, and so it was awesome.
Oh
I mean,
my
I
God,
owe
that's awesome.
I owe a lot to Babson. They're a phenomenal school. I'd recommend them to anyone that has a passion for entrepreneurship. And yeah, it's I managed to finish. I finished with great grades, but once again, I got a lot of help along
Yeah.
the way.
Well, and you probably became their own case study eventually.
Yeah,
Since you
I think I have
started from one of their class projects, that's pretty cool.
a couple case studies, and I do a lot of speaking there still.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, so you sell, how old are you?
I don't think I was 20 yet. I remember like having an
Wow.
exit and having like the money to go buy a house and stuff, and being like, well, I'd love to get a beer at a bar, but I'll wait a few months to do that. So yeah.
So, how did you feel about like starting another business at that point? Were you tired or were you energized to start something like how, I know you're saying you start BotKeeper because of the accounting issues of that business, but where did that start coming to fruition?
So it's funny. I actually I had to do like some soul searching. So like, you achieve a level of success, I think, like really early,
Yeah.
and you start to like question like what's the rest? What's the meaning of life? What's the rest of
Right.
it for? I could like live comfortably for the rest of my life, and it's like, all right, like I had set the bar here, and
Right.
what it just meant was I needed to like set the bar higher, or um, like I started to like prioritize family. I'd put that on the back burner for too long, I think, during all of that. And then yeah, just like, it was like, all right, let me find the next passion. Let me take a little bit of time before doing it. And I tried like a few little projects on the side while I was like taking some time off. And then I was like, you know what? This accounting thing that was a headache or a thorn, I'm gonna go try to fix that. And then joined what was a husband and wife who had started a bookkeeping practice, and invested in it, and came in as like the managing director, and then helped kind of like lead, call it like the next chapter of growth for the business, and then ran into all the headaches and the glass ceiling that is the accounting industry, and then that led me ultimately to BotKeeper. So a few years later, I was there for I think like 3.5, yeah, 3 years.
And so you were running the business? Is that
I was a partner. I was an owner. And
okay.
so I ran the sales and marketing side, and my partner ran the accounting and operations side.
Okay. And then where did the idea of BotKeeper begin?
So while there, I started to see like, it was funny. Like in the early years, you could find and hire accountants,
Mm-hmm.
and good ones, and it's like progressively, like every year, it just got harder and harder to find good accountants. And I started looking into like why, like what are we doing that's not working, and then going to conferences and realizing everyone else is having the same problem. And lo and behold, the number of people going into accounting is on the decline, that there's an exponential increase for financial services because there's more new, like it's easier to start businesses. So more businesses are starting and have a need than ever before. And then a lot of people were retiring. The average age in the industry, I think, is like 55.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people were like, who were in the industry, when they leave an accounting job, they didn't just take another accounting job, they've left the industry altogether. And
Right.
you start to see these like big macro effects of, you need to figure out a way to automate as much of this as you can, so you could have the limited resources focus on the critical thinking, the advisory, the consulting, the human aspect of accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big headaches that most firms struggle with, and we saw it too, was you hire skilled people, but you can't do skilled work until the basics done. Like tax, audit, CFO, advisory, consulting, all depends on clean and accurate books. And so if you can't find or hire the resources to do the bookkeeping, those skilled people get dragged into doing more basic routine work. And then they're not free to do the advisory and consulting. And so that was part of it. Was, all right, well, I wonder if I could take some of the things I did with my lighting company from an automation standpoint, and automate aspects of bookkeeping, and of the, call it like the basic high volume time consuming processes. And then the other part was, the average firm was like, had 6 to a dozen apps in their app stack. And that meant
Mm-hmm.
you had to have like someone managing integrations, and none of these systems talk to each other. And it's a terrible experience. Like to do the books for a client, I got to log in and out of 6 different systems and build these crazy Excels to like manage it and visualize everything that's going on and what clients are using what apps. And for the client, that's a terrible experience. You got to tell them to, send me receipts, use this app, to, I need you to sign in for this app so I can get your bank statements. And here's where you're going to store files. And I'm going to send you, I need you to sign up for Asana to do tasks. And so the thought for BotKeeper was, well, let's do 2 things. If we could consolidate that app stack and unify it into one integrated solution, designed purposely for accountants, that would act as like a data exchange, because it would get the data from the client into the system. And then you could run that data through machine learning and AI, which had, kind of made some pretty big leaps in the past couple of years. And then the output would go into the books, like accurate and clean, and you could pull that output back in and render it in dashboards and visualize it, like ways to like provide the analytics and visualization on it, which would then automate the need also for creating like Excel dashboards. And that was the idea of BotKeeper, is one unified system with machine learning embedded that could do a lot of the work and allow the skilled individual to do more skilled work and be more human.
Yeah. So from the leadership standpoint, you definitely, you're willing to take risks, you're willing to solve problems yourself, right? Like since you were little and saw your parents doing that. But how did you transfer to leading people? Because there's a big difference, right? I've got faith in myself to get this stuff done and we'll make it because I'm going to will it to happen and I won't stop working, to I have to trust other people to get this stuff done in the way that I want it to get done, when you're kind of a person that takes care of this stuff yourself.
Yeah, I'd say like, it progressed over time. I definitely was more of a control freak earlier on. And I think what I saw was that if you want to control everything, the impact you can have on anything is then going to be limited by you. And ultimately, like there's only so many hours in the day, and no matter how hard you work, like you need others. So, even with the gumball business, like I convinced my brother and sister to both invest in it and put some money in that, and then start helping me service the machines. I hired some friends and family to start a landscaping business. And so I was doing that, and like you're getting leverage on yourself. And then when I got to the lighting business, I think there's like a photo in, it was like the New York Times or Bloomberg, which had like, it was a photo of my team. It was like me and my partner, Dinesh, and we were like, 17 years old, like young looking. And then it was like everyone else who was like at least twice our age. And so it became, and like, that was like a big lesson. It was like, look, like my job, the best thing I could do is, and it was tough, like the first time I did it, but the best thing I could do was to take things that I'm doing right now and keep replacing myself with people who are more skilled and experienced and experts at any one of those things. And so I still do that at BotKeeper. It's like, I constantly look at what am I doing, what's made it onto my plate, and how do I take, compartmentalize some chunk of that and then hire someone who's way better than me, like more skilled, experienced, just passionate about that one thing. And I lead and inspire them into like, here's what we're trying to do. And if I can bring enough people together to make this happen, like that's how we're going to have this huge impact. And I think I inspire, I influence, I attract the talent. And then once you attract the talent, it's like my job to be a sounding board, but get out of their way. Like, let them do the things that they're really good at, move as fast as they can, make the decisions, have the control, have the responsibility, and just enable them as best I can. And so, I'm constantly trying to take a chunk of whatever I'm doing off my plate and bringing an expert in to own it and be passionate about just that thing. And then if you can attract enough people, you can do something, really great. Like that's going to impact generations and not, just a town or a neighborhood.
Right. So where have you gotten in trouble with that? Where has that taken you down a bad path?
So I think, I'd say like early on, I it's this like you have to get comfortable with the idea that you're bringing in people who know more than you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like a weird relinquishment of control, and also like you feel small, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you started this thing and you like it was your baby, but now there are people all around you who know more about it, and there's you kind of start to think like, well, what's my value anymore? And
Right.
so I think initially the things that got me into trouble was I hired people that weren't better than me, but that I thought I could teach or train.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as soon as I got comfortable with the idea of, look, like I want to be taught or trained by the people I hire,
Right.
and my value to the business is not being the smartest person or the best in that, but bringing the best people in. Um, that I think is what made a big difference for the business, and we've been able to do that at BotKeeper, and the dividends that that's paid has been insane.
Yeah, it's such a good lesson. Um, so when you took that break and you said you were questioning the meaning of life and prioritizing family, how are you doing with that with BotKeeper? And like, have you gotten off track of what you thought you needed during that intermediate period?
Yeah, I think for me, part of the period was to realize that my passion, like, and is to build things. Like whether it was like selling this business, like that's not me. That like that
Right.
business doesn't define who I am. It's just one piece of my journey. And so, getting to that point where I could be like happy, like, maybe BotKeeper isn't the last venture for me. I think
Right.
it will be a long venture for me, but I'll likely start other businesses too. And BotKeeper isn't, I'm not BotKeeper. BotKeeper is something that's beyond me. That was an important part. The other
Mm-hmm.
part was, balancing that three-legged stool. Like I have a purpose. Like I love what I do. And when you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But then I like the other legs of that stool are family and health. And so I made sure that, I stay healthy, I eat healthy, I exercise. And then I make sure that I like put enough back into the family bank. And even if I can't do it in terms of quantity of time, that the time I put into that bank is like very meaningful and purposeful and creates moments and memories. So every Friday, I take like 2+ hours, 2 to 3 hours in the morning to do a dad-daughter adventure. So I alternate Fridays with each one of my girls, and then the third Friday, I take them both somewhere. And we'll go on like an adventure. We'll go to like a pond or a lake or like a new playground or the market, um, and just like have like a very cool memory that it's not time in front of a TV. It's not just like time being around and being kind of like on my phone or thinking, put the phone away, and it's just all in on the family during those times. And so and unplugging on the weekend. So still could use I always got to work on it.
Yeah.
I love, like, the thing is when I love work, it's like you're trading one love for the next. But
Yes.
I love that I love so many things, and I have so many people who love me back, and support mechanisms. So I'm
Yeah.
very blessed.
That's awesome. So really good lessons. And I think, you can only get there by going through the bad stuff, to know like, oh, I don't want to, like, as soon as you have that feeling again that you're working too much or you're getting separated, you're like, okay, you got to pause. And then I think with some of your other lessons, what part of me do I need to replace at work so I can get my time back?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, totally. And it's like, I think most entrepreneurs, like what makes you an entrepreneur is like the control. Like you're not willing to just let things play out the way they are. You're like, I can do that better. Or I can,
Yeah.
if I did it, it could be better. And then it's like, being comfortable letting other people do it and having them be better at it. And you just,
And, they get to the same answer maybe, but a different way. And you can learn from the way they got there,
oh,
that you're like, I wouldn't have done it that way, but interesting.
100%. Always just having an open mind. The
Yeah.
same naiveness that you entered with, you got to keep.
Yeah. Well, and it just like I sold my accounting practice, I don't know, at this point, probably 15 years ago. But I remember what you were talking about, like the day the morning after, I was so depressed.
Yeah.
And which I should have been happy that I got it sold. And I had to like keep pushing myself to go out running every day. Like I'm like, got to get out of this funk. But it's like people don't realize when you're an entrepreneur, it's like your right arm or it's a part of your body. Like, and like you kind of define yourself by what you're creating. And then when you let it go, it's like it's a grief. It's like it's passing and you have to create something new.
Yeah, I mean, you lose your identity,
Mm-hmm.
and the way I kind of related it to people, because they're like, you should be, like everyone's saying, you should be so happy. Look at this is awesome. It's like, yeah, but just think about it. Every time I interacted with family or friends for the last 4 years I was building that lighting business, what do you think they were asking me about? It's like,
Right.
what's going on with Think Light? What's up? And I was like, oh, we're doing this and we got this
Yeah.
going on. And then you interact with friends and family and they're like, hey, so what are you up to these days? Like, oh, it's kind of on vacation. Like, you don't have anything going on.
Nothing.
You can't share stories. Like, it all,
Stock market's doing well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Well, and I always advise entrepreneurs because that's where it goes wrong, right? When you start thinking of it as yours instead of like what you're saying about BotKeeper, like BotKeeper is this thing.
yeah,
And if you start it personalizing it too much, then what happens is you make bad decisions for the business.
yes.
Like, and you really have to have that independent view of like, what's the right thing for BotKeeper, not the right thing for me. And
Yeah.
that's hard,
I mean, I tell my team what my personal touch on the business or embodiment of me is the culture and the values.
Yeah.
Everything else, like it's the company. I mean, it's all of you, not me. If I died or got hit by a bus tomorrow, BotKeeper would live on and keep thriving. It doesn't need me anymore. I'm just a piece of the equation. So yeah, it's being I think like humble and vulnerable enough to accept that reality.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. So I like to end with some rapid fire questions. So you get to pick a category. So family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Family and friends.
Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I want.
Enough time with them. Like it'll never have enough time with them. And scaling a business, like your most scarce commodity is time. So it's like constant battle, but time for sure.
And during that time being present, right?
Yes.
It's hard because you got all that stuff going on. Things or actions that I do have that I want.
I'd say like loved ones, family and friends. I'm
Mhm.
surrounded by a lot of really great people, advisors, mentors, family. So yeah, I want all of that and more.
Things or actions I don't have that I don't want.
I'd say like material possessions. Like, like for me, I don't think, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think I enjoy nice things, but I
Yeah.
don't have a want for them. I think I would, if I could buy time, then I would trade material possessions any day.
It's so interesting. I mean, there are people that are driven over money, but I've always said the same, like I'm driven over like the journey, like and seeing
Yeah.
what works and what doesn't work and getting excited by it. And it's a very different understanding than people that are driven by like things, right?
And I think that's probably what makes like a lot of companies, I think it's like so hard to be driven by the outcome
Yes.
because you're going through so many ups and downs. Like that's got to
Yeah.
be such a mental struggle. But if you like love the whole process and what you're doing,
Yeah.
it's like where you're trying to go, the outcome doesn't matter. You're enjoying the ride.
Right. Exactly. And you can get through the hard parts because you're like, well, we got this coming up. So
Yeah.
we're good. We'll get through
About
this.
the there and now, not
Yeah.
just, buying something at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
All right. Last question. Things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
I think I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So, and to that end, like it would be nice to be, I think, more satisfied with things. Like I always, it's not that I want more, but it's like I always feel like I could have
Gratitude.
done more,
Yeah.
do better. And so, it would be nice if I think I like had a little bit of a lower bar and live maybe more in the moment.
Yeah. Awesome. So as we close out, you've given us lots of great lessons. Is there anything that we haven't said that you want to make sure that or key things that you want people to remember about your story, or what lessons you'd like them to know?
And I think it's a lot of what was said. Find your purpose, and be passionate about it. If you do, you'll never work a day in your life. You'll love what you do, regardless of the outcome. And then make sure you maintain that three-legged stool. Like, purpose is one part, but then family and health. If you're healthy, family and purpose will be better. If you have the time with family, you'll feel, I think, more motivated and wholesome. So yeah, don't lose track of that three-legged stool and keeping the balance.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for having me.
And now for a mindful moments segment of this interview with Enrico. I think there were so many different tips and lessons that Enrico has learned along the way that is really helpful for us to step back and think about how to incorporate some of this into our own lives. First off, his observation of himself as a young boy and understanding that he wasn't really into having a boss or someone telling him what to do, and really taking on initiatives for himself, which is really interesting when you look at yourself and realize those things. But the people around you also have to encourage or support you in who you are. And I think too many times we try to make cutouts, whether they're family members or coworkers, that everyone should fit a certain formula. And had that happened with Enrico, his journey could have been completely different, because he may have never had the confidence to do the kinds of things that he talked about doing, like starting a business when he was 17 years old and having the wherewithal and just the confidence to do something like that. And part of that was watching his grandfathers, and really, what it sounded like to me was looking at them through rock star glasses, because everybody knew who they were in the town, and he wanted that as well. And so I think, secondly, besides allowing someone to be who they are, is having that vision of who you want to be. And I think he had that vision for so long by watching their examples, and also being really honest with himself of what he was good at and what he wasn't good at. And thirdly, I think his observation of watching his father work in his grandfather's business and didn't love what he did really took an effect on him as well, is that what he has always done, if you look at all the different businesses he started and so forth, whether they be, just vending machine businesses or, BotKeeper, is that he knew he had to love what he was going to do in life and that it wouldn't feel like work. And I think it's really important that we have a vision, and then we also align it with what we're passionate about, what is our purpose. And a lot of times we don't spend time to really step back and think about the things that we are really passionate about, or the feeling that we want to have. So maybe we don't know the thing, but we do know the feeling that when we do things that we enjoy, we create energy or feeling inside of ourselves that we want to achieve. So even if we don't know the thing, but we know we're not aligning to that feeling, we know we're getting off. And so having some sort of vision of what you want to feel or what is the thing that you want to do is really important, so that as you go through your career, you know when it's time to pivot, when it's time to shift. And so his story of really starting this first business, this lighting business, right from school, to me is just amazing. Besides the fact that he graduated building a global company at the same time and being so young. But part of what we learn along the way is what we saw other people do. And because he saw his family take risks, and his dad eventually create a wealth management firm that he was really happy with, his mom starting day spas that she was really passionate about, that it wasn't about whether he had expertise in something, it was about being passionate about the work. But I think some of his lessons were really important that he talked about from building a business standpoint is, number one, learning to not make assumptions and ask more questions. And often we don't ask questions because we're afraid if we ask the question, people might think we don't know something or we're supposed to be smarter than we are for the position that we're in. And it's really important that we realize that you probably don't have that expectation of other people. It's a lot of self-talk that actually holds us back from being more transparent and vulnerable to go out there and ask the questions that you need. So if you don't know something, it's really important that we stretch ourselves, that we take career opportunities or business opportunities that maybe we're not an expert in, but we need to make sure we are asking the questions and being vulnerable and saying we may not know the answer and letting someone know that so that they're explaining what we need to know. And one of his lessons too was really important to have the right advisors and mentors around you as well. And sometimes we don't want to spend the money on that or ask someone for the help. But again, if you don't know what to ask and somebody else does know what to ask, it can help skip a lot of pain that you might get into by not having that expertise around you. Now, he also took a transition out of that business. So he was a partner with somebody else. That partner stayed on, but he realized he was ready to move on from that business. And I think it was a really important point in his life where he took that pause and really, now that he learned what it was like to grow a business of that size, what he really wanted for his life. And I think all of us have those moments in our life, and maybe multiple moments in our life, that we need to really be honest with ourselves of how we're feeling and how we want to shift things to make sure we get things into the right balance. And that was really the three-legged stool that Enrico talked about making sure that as you're building a business that you are equally putting work, family, and health in the right buckets and assessing that. So if you get off track, which is really easy to get off track because we're all motivated, we all want to achieve and be successful. But what we don't want to do is get off from the feeling that we have or start feeling like our career or our business is a burden and not have the joy and the passion around it. And part of what he's talked about doing that is so important to create that three-legged stool is always replacing himself. And I thought that was a great way of putting it, right? That we need to think about what areas are we working in that someone else could do better. That we're not always hiring people that aren't as smart as us, that we're hiring people smarter than us in different areas of things that we do so it can be taken to the next level. And we did have quite a conversation about, as an entrepreneur, not thinking the business is a part of you, but actually looking at it as a separate entity and what is right to do the business versus for the individual. And when we start looking at it from an individual, from a selfish standpoint, we'll never do the right thing for the business. And that's whether you're an entrepreneur, that's whether you're in leadership in a corporation, that we always have to step back from an independent observer standpoint and make sure that you are giving the business space to do the things that it needs to do and not for selfish purposes. And things will always work out the way it should. So rather than having fear that someone might be better, instead think about how you're going to be lifted up, how you're going to become smarter, and the business is going to become even better because you were able to be vulnerable and not feel like you have to be the one with all the answers, that you are creating a culture where people can step up, that they can grow, they can learn, and you're able to balance your own life as well. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.